Derek Chauvin is officially on trial. In fact, today marks the first day of the trial, and we have heard some of the opening statements coming from both the defense attorney and the prosecutor, Jerry Blackwell. Before I go to this video, just a reminder, Derek Chauvin, of course, is the Minneapolis cop who knelt on George Floyd's neck for nearly 9 minutes, killing him in broad daylight, and he's on trial for that very reason. With that said, let's hear from Prosecutor Blackwell.
Now, I spent a few minutes talking to you about what this case is about. There are any number of things that this case is not about. Maybe an infinite number of things the case isn't about. But one of those things that this case is not about all police or all policing. You will learn from Chief Arredondo when he comes that police officers have difficult jobs. They have to make split-second decisions. They sometimes have to make split-second life and death decisions. And this case is not about split-second decision-making. In 9 minutes and 29 seconds, there are 479 seconds, not a split second among them.
Cenk, what do you think about that argument from the prosecutor? Do you think that's a strong argument?
I mean, I like it because that's the number one excuse that cops use across the country. Wow, look, I had to shoot him in the back. I didn't know if he was armed or unarmed, but what if he had a weapon I couldn't see? I had to murder him just in case, and that works almost every time. In this case, well, brother, you had 9.5 minutes, right? So where's the split-second decision? What couldn't you tell? When he said he couldn't breathe over and over again, what couldn't you tell? Where was the split-second decision, right? So no, this was clear intent to, at a minimum, if it's not to murder him, it's certainly to kneel on his neck for all this time. He can't argue intent. He can't argue that he wasn't sure if Floyd had a weapon. So yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I guess, my only issue with it is get to what the defense is going to lean on in order to defend Chauvin, which is, of course, all sorts of disgusting smears about George Floyd and how he was a drug addict and how he didn't actually die as a result of being, suffocated to death with a cop's knee on his neck for nearly 9 minutes. And to be sure, that's exactly what the defense attorney used in his opening statements. I guess the point that I'm trying to make is cut to the core of what the defense is going to use, and it's nothing more than disgusting, defamatory nonsense. And yes, the defense attorney also included some additional components to that argument, which we'll show you in just a minute. But the other issue that I had with it is it seems to kind of validate the lies that we hear in response to other police brutality stories, and we know that it's not a split-second decision. When you have someone running away from cops and the cop shoots that person in the back, maybe it's a split-second decision in deciding to take someone's life when they're not an imminent threat to you. But I felt like it wasn't the strongest statement to make. Now, again, that was just a snippet of what the opening statement was from the prosecutor. But with that said, I think it's important to also hear from the defense attorney, and here he is.
You will learn about crowd control, medical intervention, de-escalation, procedural justice, crisis intervention, and the human factors of force. That is, what happens to a police officer or any person when they are involved in a high-stress use of force situation. And you will learn that Derek Chauvin did exactly what he had been trained to do over the course of his 19-year career. The use of force is not attractive, but it is a necessary component of policing.
So it's a necessary component of policing. So the argument here, of course, is that, well, this is what Chauvin was trained to do. Which, by the way, the training for cops is obviously pretty terrible. There's no question about that. But was he really trained to kneel on someone's neck for nearly 9 minutes straight? Is that really in the training manual for cops? Is that really the education that they receive before they're put out in the field? And quick correction, of course, the prosecutor is not representing George Floyd's family, but representing the state in this lawsuit. So that was the correction that I wanted to quickly make. But Cenk, thoughts?
Yeah. So first of all, on the defense, so of course they're going to smear George Floyd, the victim. He did drugs, he had other health conditions, and that's why he died. Well, walking around, he would not have died. You put your knee on his neck for 9 minutes, that might have contributed to his death. You might not have wanted it. By the way, is that what they teach cops? Kneel on their necks, and I bet they won't have other health conditions. No, if you kneel on someone's neck, you should also consider, even if it were true, they might have other health conditions which might cause them to die, right? Because you're kneeling on their neck. So that's just, it's the most obvious. Look, I think Benjamin Crumb said it, but they said basically, if we can't get a conviction on this, then there's just no justice at all in America. That if you're a black man, you could be killed by the cops for any reason. Now I'm adding to what he said, but it's absolutely true. I mean, if you can't convict on this, right? So look, I'll go more. He says the police policy, this is exactly what he was trained to do, as Anna pointed out, right? Okay, if he gets acquitted, then I assume we're going to completely disband the leadership of the police in Minnesota and rebuild it completely. Because apparently the jury said, yes, he was trained to murder black people. Well, put aside black, he was trained to murder anyone who he has a slight disagreement with. Yes, he was exactly trained to kneel on people's neck until they die. Well, then you've got a massive problem with police training, which by the way is what we've been saying now for at least a decade on the Young Turks. And so you can't have it both ways. Say that police training is awesome and shouldn't be fixed, and it leads to ridiculous, barbaric murder of our citizens. That's just a fact. Now, Anna, are you going to get into more of his outrageous defenses? Because I want to talk about that too.
Yeah, definitely. So, the main takeaway is, well, George Floyd was unruly, he was on drugs, he had fentanyl in his system. But then there was one other point that Eric Nelson, who's again the defense attorney for Derek Chauvin, made that honestly I didn't expect, and it's just so incredibly ridiculous on its face. But without further ado, here it is.
There are people across the street. There are cars stopping, people yelling. There is a growing crowd and what officers perceive to be a threat. They're called names. Heard them this morning. Bum. They're screaming at him, causing the officers to divert their attention from the care of Mr. Floyd to the threat that was growing in front of them.
Did you get that? Like, that argument is so ridiculous that, first of all, to say that Derek Chauvin had George Floyd in his care as he was killing him in broad daylight by placing his knee on his neck, okay, choking him out for nearly 9 minutes until he died as he was crying out for his mother. Okay, George Floyd, whose mother died years prior to him getting killed in broad daylight, was calling out for his mother. I mean, that video was just unbelievably vicious, and it's being referred to as George Floyd in his care. Okay, we'll put that aside. Oh, is this what cops are? Cops are so intimidated and so scared about people driving by and people across the street yelling at them that they're unable to do their jobs in, maybe de-escalating a situation and preventing someone from dying when they don't need to die? No, I mean, come on. Like, what kind of cops are getting hired? First of all, I don't believe that argument. I don't give it any validation whatsoever. But for anyone who does believe it, really, you think that a bunch of pathetic people who are scared of their own shadow are getting hired in these police departments? And that's enough of an excuse for us to just allow them to go around choking people to death?
Yeah.
Jesus.
So the argument is the crowd made him do it because they distracted him. And so, you know what they distracted him with? We showed you the video. They were saying, please stop killing him. He was distracted by what? Like, oh, are you challenging my authority? No, I will kill him, and I'll show you, you crowd, you made me do it by challenging my authority. And how long was he just distracted? Was he distracted for 6 minutes, 7 minutes, 8 minutes, 9 minutes? How long was he distracted by the crowd who was saying, please stop murdering that guy right in front of our eyes? I mean, the audacity of blaming the guys who were trying to stop you from committing that murder is unreal. It's record breaking. And if you're distracted by people saying, please don't murder people in front of us, then I guess you shouldn't be a cop and you should get convicted. Look, I think this is the easiest closing statement of all time when they finally get to it. Just ask the jury, would any of you be okay with this happening to you? Would you be okay with, hey, listen, you know what? And think of a time that you maybe had an infraction, right? Because the thing that George Floyd was being investigated for was potentially a $20 counterfeit bill. Have any of you done a $20 crime? Do you think that your neck should have been knelt on for 9 minutes? And then let's see, maybe you have a pre-existing health condition, maybe you don't, maybe you had a beer, maybe you didn't, whatever it was. Let's see if you make it. No, if you think, no, obviously that would endanger my life, then convict the guy. If they don't get a conviction, it will be, no, man, that means there's absolutely no justice in this country. And so, by the way, one other witness today, 9/11 dispatcher, she calls as police supervisor saying, I don't know if this tape froze because this guy's been kneeling on his neck for so long, I can't believe he's still kneeling on it. So a fellow like a 9/11 dispatcher is like, somebody go help the guy who's being assaulted by the cop. It's unbelievable. So, I mean, I've never seen anyone more guilty. We've got to get justice here.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.